308. That is the number of British car manufacturers that existed in 1900. By 1970, the number was less than 10. The rarest British cars on this list were built by companies that disappeared, taking their secrets and their designs with them. Some produced fewer than 100 cars. Some produced fewer than 20. The rarest car on this list had a total production run of exactly 9 units. 9 cars, built by hand, for a handful of customers, and then the factory closed forever. 5 cars, 5 levels of rarity, and only one was the rarest. Let us count them down. Number 5. The Jensen Interceptor. West Bromwich, 1966 to 1976. Jensen Motors was a small manufacturer that built high-performance Grand Tourers in small numbers. The Interceptor was their masterpiece, with a body designed by Carrozzeria Touring of Italy and a Chrysler 6.3-liter V8 engine producing 325 horsepower. The top speed was around 140 miles per hour, and the car was one of the first in the world to feature four-wheel drive. In the Jensen FF version, the Interceptor was expensive, exclusive, and strikingly beautiful, with a long bonnet, a fastback rear window, and quad exhausts. Production lasted 10 years, with roughly 6,400 units built across all versions. That number sounds large, but it makes the Interceptor rarer than a Jaguar E-Type or an Aston Martin DB5 by an order of magnitude. The Jensen also had a technical first that most people have never heard of. The Jensen FF, the four-wheel drive version of the Interceptor, was the first production car in the world with anti-lock brakes. The system was called Maxeret, developed by Dunlop for aircraft use, and it used a flywheel and a valve to modulate brake pressure, preventing wheel lockup. The FF also had four-wheel drive, using a Ferguson system that distributed power to all 4 wheels. The combination of four-wheel drive and anti-lock brakes, in 1966, was 20 years ahead of the rest of the industry. The FF was so advanced that it could stop on surfaces where other cars were still accelerating. The problem was the price. The FF cost nearly double the price of a standard Interceptor, and the market for a car that was ahead of its time was limited. Production of the FF was roughly 320 units, making it one of the rarest variants of any British car. Today, the Interceptor is one of the most underrated British cars of the 60s and 70s. The V8 engine is reliable, the parts supply is reasonable, and the car can be used as a daily driver in a way that an Aston Martin or a Ferrari cannot. But the rarity means that good examples are scarce and the prices are rising steadily as collectors discover what the enthusiasts have known for years. The Jensen Interceptor is the most British car you have probably never heard of. Number 4. The Bristol 400. Filton, 1949. Bristol Cars was one of the most secretive car manufacturers in the world. The company had no dealerships, no advertising, and no interest in publicity. Customers made an appointment at the factory in Filton, near Bristol, ordered their car, and waited. Bristol built luxury Grand Tourers for a clientele that valued discretion above all else. The 400 was the first Bristol, based on the pre-war BMW 328, because Bristol had acquired the rights to the BMW designs as part of war reparations. The 400 was powered by a 2-liter 6-cylinder engine producing 80 horsepower with a top speed of around 95 miles per hour. The car was beautifully engineered, with aerodynamic styling that was years ahead of its time. The interior was trimmed in leather and walnut, and the build quality was exceptional. Production of the 400 is estimated at roughly 700 units, and the car laid the foundation for the Bristol brand, which would produce a series of increasingly refined Grand Tourers over the next 60 years. Bristol Cars also had one of the most unusual business models in the history of the automobile. The company refused to advertise, refused to exhibit at motor shows, and refused to sell through dealerships. The only way to buy a Bristol was to visit the factory in Kensington, where a salesperson would show you the car, discuss the specifications, and take your order. The factory itself was a modest building that looked more like a workshop than a car factory, and the cars were built by a small team of craftsmen. Bristol Cars survived for over 60 years on this model, serving a clientele that included royalty, politicians, and captains of industry. The company finally closed in 2011, and the cars, which were already rare, became instantly collectible. A Bristol is the ultimate statement of understatement, the car for someone who wants to be noticed by nobody. Bristol Cars was the most British manufacturer of all. Quiet, exclusive, and utterly uninterested in what anyone else thought. The company built cars for people who did not need to impress anyone, because they had nothing to prove. A question for you. Bristol or Jensen? Write just the name in the comments. Both are rare, both are British. Only one is your favorite. Number 3. The Gordon Keeble GK1. Eastner and Slough, 1964 to 1967. Gordon Keeble was a small manufacturer that built one car, the GK1, and then went bankrupt. The GK1 was a Grand Tourer with a fiberglass body designed by Bertoni of Italy and a Chevrolet 5.3-liter V8 engine, producing 300 horsepower. The top speed was around 135 miles per hour. The car was stunningly beautiful, with clean, understated lines, quad headlights, and a long, elegant bonnet. The Gordon Keeble badge featured a tortoise, which was chosen because the car was supposed to be unhurried and effortless, despite its enormous power. The reality was somewhat different. The V8 engine was reliable, but the fiberglass body was prone to cracking, and the build quality varied significantly between cars. Each GK1 was essentially hand-built, and no two were exactly alike. Production lasted 3 years, with roughly 100 units built before the company ran out of money. The GK1 is one of the rarest British Grand Tours of the 60s, and the surviving examples are scattered across the world, guarded by owners who know they have something truly unique. Number 2, the AC 428, Thames Ditton, 1965 to 1973. AC Cars, the same company that built the Cobra, created the 428 as a more refined, more luxurious Grand Tourer. The car used a Ford 6.99-liter V8 engine, producing 345 horsepower, with a top speed of around 145 miles per hour. The body was designed by Frua of Italy, and the car was available as a coupe or a convertible. The 428 was beautiful, powerful, and exclusive. Production was tiny, with roughly 80 units built over 8 years. The reason for the low numbers was the price. The 428 cost more than a contemporary Aston Martin, and the market for a car that was neither as famous nor as prestigious was limited. AC built the 428 alongside the Cobra, and the Cobra outsold it by more than 10 to 1. The AC 428 also had a curious problem. The car was too refined. The Cobra was a raw, brutal, loud sports car that appealed to thrill seekers and racers. The 428 was quiet, comfortable, and refined, with leather interior, quiet exhaust, and smooth ride. The customers who wanted a Cobra did not want refinement. The customers who wanted refinement bought an Aston Martin. The 428 fell between two markets, and the tiny production numbers reflected that. AC tried to relaunch the car with different styling and marketing, but the demand never materialized. The 428 is the lesson that a great car is not enough. It also needs a market. Today, the 428 is one of the rarest British cars of the 60s, and many enthusiasts are not even aware it exists. The car is a hidden gem, a hand-built Italian-bodied, American-engined, British Grand Tourer that deserves to be better known. Number 1. The Panther 6, Weybridge, 1977. The Panther 6 was the rarest British car ever built, and also one of the most outrageous. The car had 6 wheels, 6, arranged in pairs at the front, and a set of 4 at the rear. The engine was a mid-mounted Cadillac 8.2-liter V8, producing 600 horsepower. The top speed was claimed to be 200 miles per hour, a figure that was never verified and almost certainly exaggerated, but the car could certainly exceed 150. The body was designed by Robert Jankel, the founder of Panther Westwinds, and it was styled to look like a pre-war Grand Prix car, with cycle wings, external exhaust pipes, and a rakish windshield. The interior was trimmed in leather and walnut, with instruments that were scattered across the dashboard in a style that was more aircraft than automobile. The Panther 6 was a fantasy made of fiberglass and American muscle. Production was exactly 2 units, 2 cars, hand-built, sold to private collectors, and then the project was abandoned. The development costs had been enormous, and the market for a 6-wheeled, 600-horsepower supercar was, unsurprisingly, limited. One of the 2 cars was exported to the Middle East, and the other remained in Britain. The Panther 6 is the ultimate rarity, the car that most people have never seen, and most enthusiasts have never heard of. The Panther 6 also appeared in one of the most unexpected places in automotive history. The car was featured in the comic book The Eagle, as the car driven by a superhero, and the 6-wheeled 600-horsepower machine was so extraordinary that it looked more like a fictional vehicle than a real one. The fact that it existed at all, in metal and fiberglass rather than ink and paper, is a testament to the ambition of Robert Jankel and the team at Panther Westwinds. They built the impossible, sold it to 2 people, and then moved on. The Panther 6 is the ultimate expression of British automotive eccentricity, the proof that in Britain, if you could imagine a car, someone would build it, regardless of whether anyone would buy it. 2 cars. That is the entire production run. There are Porsches with higher production numbers than that. The British car industry's history of rarity is a story of ambition exceeding resources. Again and again, small manufacturers with brilliant designers and limited capital produced extraordinary cars that the market could not sustain. The technology was there, the talent was there, and the vision was there. What was missing was the money to build in numbers that would make the cars viable. The great manufacturers Jaguar, Aston Martin, Bentley survived because they found customers in sufficient numbers. The small manufacturers, Jensen, Bristol, Gordon Keeble, AC, Panther, built cars that were as good as anything from the big brands, but they built them in numbers too small to survive. 5 cars, 5 levels of rarity. We started with the Jensen Interceptor, 6,400 units and counting. Then the Bristol 400, 700 units of quiet luxury. Next, the Gordon Keeble GK1, 100 units of hand-built ambition. Then the AC 428, 80 units of forgotten elegance, and finally the Panther 6, 2 cars, 2 fantasies on 6 wheels. The surprising thing about this list is that the rarest British car was not built by a prestigious manufacturer. It was built by a small company in Surrey that specialized in replica cars, and that decided to build the most outrageous vehicle it could imagine. And one final thought, the rarity of these cars means that most people will never see one in person. The Jensen Interceptor, the most common car on this list, is still rare enough that spotting one on the road is an event. The Bristol, the Gordon Keeble, the AC 428, these are cars that exist in private collections, in museums, and in the memories of the few who have driven them. And the Panther 6, with its 6 wheels and its 2 examples, is the rarest of all, a car that most enthusiasts will only ever see in photographs. But that rarity is what makes these cars special. They are not mass-produced. They are not common. They are unique, each one a chapter in the story of British automotive ambition, and each one irreplaceable. These cars were more than transport. They were statements. They were the proof that British engineering, at its most extreme, was willing to build machines that the world had never seen, regardless of whether the world wanted them. The collectors who own these cars are a special breed. They are not investors looking for a return, although the values have certainly risen. They are enthusiasts who understand that these cars represent a moment in time, a brief flowering of creativity and ambition that will never be repeated. They maintain the cars, drive them occasionally, and show them at events where other enthusiasts can see them and appreciate them. The owners of the Panther 6, the 2 people who own the rarest British car in the world, carry a responsibility that goes beyond ownership. They are custodians of a legacy, and when they start the engine and the 600 horsepower Cadillac V8 fills the air with sound, they are keeping alive a dream that nearly died in a workshop in Weybridge 40 years ago. Which of these 5 cars would you want in your collection? Interceptor, Bristol, Gordon Keeble, AC, or Panther? Write just the name in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey through the rarest British cars, leave a like and subscribe. And tell us what you want us to take apart next. British motorcycles, British buses, British racing cars, or something else entirely.